Did anyone try to do the homework? Did you have homework? No, of course you did. I'm joking. But really, seriously, anyone has any questions from yesterday that were not answered? Okay, well that's good. That's good to know. So we just saved ourselves 15 minutes. Very good. So let's jump right into today's content. Before going into detailed marketing plan, export plan or export business plan, those are synonyms. So before we go into the planning exercise, we first of all need to identify the right strategy of exporting. As a matter of fact, direct exporting, which is selling directly to the customers outside our country, is just one of many strategies how you can expand your markets. The other strategy that some of you may use already is indirect exporting. So direct exporting is the case when you sell to other Canadian companies that you export your product or that use your product as a component of their product. So this strategy is absolutely valid, and you are more than welcome to use it. Other strategies are joint venture. So this is the strategy where you team up with the company outside Canada, and that company helps you to promote products, for example, overseas, or service the products. It doesn't necessarily have to be the legal partnership. It can be just a long-term cooperation or agreement without creation of a new company. Licensing is the other potential option. In some cases, for example, licensing production can make sense. If it's way too expensive to ship your product from Canada to the other market, then maybe it's a good idea for you to find the partner, the producer, the manufacturer overseas, and license them production of your product. And last but not least is foreign direct investment. This is the strategy where you should go directly to the export market and establish your operations, your own facilities. You hire people on payroll, so they are your employees. And these are the examples of foreign direct investment. Not necessarily that you establish a plant there. You may establish a warehouse. You may set up the office with your employees, just foreign nationals hired by you as your employees. Are there any examples from the audience of using strategies 3, 4, or 5? Well, I'm pretty sure you are in either first or second strategy, and those two will be our focus for today. But just wonder if anyone teamed up, for example, with somebody.
I contacted a couple of people who used to work for a competitor of mine, and they're in an unrelated business now, and they're agreeing to help me out, and if business comes from it, then I help them out a little bit. So,
so they help you on the promotional side, right?
More so knowing who to target.
Yeah, that's a good example. So they don't have a legal partnership, if you will. But
no, they're free.
It's like cooperation. It's more of a cooperation, yeah. Very good. So the other hand?
Yeah, so my arrangement is the company has rights to my product, so I basically they're the importer, so they're on our back. And so I've given a certain amount of expectations in order to get the rights to my products that you would say. And that would be distribution and I guess a bit of licensing.
Yeah, this is an example of licensing. So they license the distribution of the product to one specific company. Okay, now let's go to the details. When it comes to the planning your marketing, typically domestically you use four fundamentals. In market they call them 4 Ps. And anyone familiar with 4 Ps in marketing? Okay, very good. So, well, 4Ps is the system, marketing system, if you will, that recommends you to consider 4 factors that are product, price, promotion, and place when it comes to your product. When you go outside the country, when you expand internationally, there's 13 P's framework. So there's way more factors that you need to consider when you expand internationally. And those factors you see right here on the screen. We are going to go through each and every one of them, and I will explain how to use those components of the marketing system in order to build your export plan. And our main focus in the afternoon will be you going through each and every single P and developing your own plan based on that framework. Anyone heard of 13 P's before? Any of those, by the way, other than first 4? Okay, that's okay. I'm glad I brought you this information, because this is how you plan exporting. All right, let's start with the product. When you export or prepare yourself to export product to the foreign markets, when it comes to the product, you should consider all multiple components from which product consists of. So it's not only the physical product itself, like I say, its content. You should also consider the packaging. You should also consider labeling, your brand. You should understand whether your brand sounds good in a foreign language. Physical dimensions. Some people in other markets may use to smaller sizes or larger sizes. So this is something that you need to understand. System of measurement is also important. In countries, systems of measurements, they are different. In the example of agricultural products, we had very interesting examples with bushels versus tons. So apparently for every crop, this conversion from bushels to metric tons is different. There are different rules that apply to the conversion.
Same with pounds too, a lot of stuff. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. So in many cases there are those metrics that are not standard, if you will. In international trade, metric system is used as a standard, because it's internationally accepted and understandable by customs service around the world. So if you happen not to use metric system yet in your products, then when you export, this is mandatory. Some countries, though, they regulate it from consumer perspective. So if you are selling products directly to the consumers, make sure what metric system is acceptable by the consumers. So it may not necessarily be the requirement imposed by the government. It may also be what the consumer used to say, used to pounds or kilos. Any examples of metric systems?
Well, in selling to the U.S., our ton is different than theirs. It's a metric ton of 1,000 kilos versus 2,000 pounds.
Yeah,
Careful.
very good example. Okay, let's talk now more about specifically labeling. Here in this slide I put the most universal components of the labeling, but it's important for you to figure out the requirements to the labeling beforehand. Those 5 items are standard around the world. First of all, you make sure that if your product is a consumer product, then the label should read in the foreign language. Be careful though, because some countries, just like Canada, have 2 languages. Although they may not be used around the country, but they may still be the official languages. Made-in label is important, so you have to specify the country. In our case, it's Canada. Then you specify the address and name of either your company, the producer, manufacturer, or exporter. for or importer in the country. You also, depending on the product, then you also put information about weights, whatever is applicable, weights, volume, content, composition. For food products, you should check specifically the requirements of those countries, especially when it comes to nutrition value and information about content. So this is something that you should understand. If it happens that your label is too large or it's not applicable, then you should just attach it as a separate document. The classic example is washing machine instruction. It's part of label, believe it or not, but it's too big to engrave it on the body of the washing machine. I put a reference here to Canada Guide to Consumer Packaging and Labeling Act. Although this is the Canadian document, I personally found it's very relevant to the requirements of export markets as well, just because it gives you very good recommendations where and how to put labels on your products, depending on the product, depending on the kind of packaging you're using.
It's on the CFA, CFI.
CFA?
Yeah, it's all the recommendation and something else that is not over there that they asked us to do it. It was the size of the letters. It's a small detail, but
Right.
it affects the label.
Any questions on products? And adaptation of your product for the purposes of export markets? And just to remind, when you look through all of these items, the adaptation may not necessarily be caused by the regulations, but also by the consumers, their tastes, what they are used to. Okay? Okay, now let's go to the pricing, and we are going to spend a little bit more time talking about the pricing, because it's very important to understand how to price the products properly in the international trade in order to keep your profit. So this is your primary goal. Pricing in for international trade is regulated. It is regulated by Incoterms. That stands for International Commercial Terms. This is the international framework, the international rule, if you will, that is accepted in majority of the countries around the world. This framework first was designed in the 1930s, and it is revised every 10 years. The most recent edition is Incoterms 2010. The next one will be Incoterms 2020. So until the year 2020, until the end of the year 2020, we're going to live according to Incoterms rules, and we're going to trade according to Incoterms 2010 rules. So I prepared the chart that you have in your handouts. If you forgot it, let me know, because we have more. And it's very important that we go through the chart right now, so it's important that everybody has one. Okay. So the purpose of Incoterms is to differentiate risks and responsibilities and costs between the buyer and the seller in international trade. And this is very important to understand, that Incoterms only deals with costs and risks. It doesn't deal with questions like ownership rights of the product. It doesn't deal with questions like financing and payment structure and who pays what in the first place. So Incoterms only is focused on costing, pricing, basically costing component, and risk and the transfer of risk, transfer of responsibility. In a practical fashion, Incoterms tells you, as a buyer, depending on the terms of trade that you had negotiated with your partner, it tells you what costs you should pay for upfront and what is exactly that you have to arrange in the international trade transaction. When we talk about what exactly you can arrange, this is what you see on the second line. When the product is shipped from country A to country B, those are all the possible steps that your product goes through in the international transaction. Those are packaging, export clearance, inspection, loading, carriage, or actually the transportation, insurance, import clearance, and unloading. It may not necessarily that all of this will apply for a product, because for example, if your product is not subject to any export controls, then you just skip it. But these are the all possible steps. Now, let's imagine that you are the exporter from Canada, and you have a buyer, let's say the United States. Then you have, in this case, you have, well, at least 7 choices which term to negotiate, and it all depends on what is convenient to you and what is convenient to your buyer. First thing to remember is that no matter which costs you should allocate to your to the price of your product, the buyer will pay for it eventually. But the point of Incoterms is that depending on which term you chose as the buyer, as a seller, you are responsible for certain costs, to arrange certain steps in the first place and to pay for those steps in the first place. To give you an example, let's say you are selling from Calgary to, let's say, Los Angeles, the States, for example. And you have chosen EXW term. Zoom in? I don't think so. Oh, let's see. I think I have it.
That's better.
Oh, cool. Okay, so let's imagine that you've chosen EXW term. So what it means in particular is that as a seller, as the Canadian exporter, you have to arrange packaging and you have to pay for the packaging if it's an additional cost. Then what you do, when you quote the price on EXW terms, you add the cost of packaging to your price. And this is how you price, in this case, for EXW term. Now, if you have chosen FCA term, then according to Incoterms, you also have to arrange and have to pay for whatever is applicable, export clearance, inspection, and loading to the mode of transport. So, in particular example, if you need to hire a couple of guys to load the product to the truck, then you have to pay to those guys in the first place. Of course, your buyer in the end will reimburse that to you, but when you price the product to your buyer on FCA terms, you just have to make sure that you don't forget to include this cost of loading. Because what may happen, you may just quote your price, your product price, and you may forget to also include packaging cost and loading cost. But when you are trading internationally on those international terms, this, if you forgot to do this, then nobody will compensate that to you. So you will just pay packaging and loading cost out of your pocket. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, as the seller, you want typically to trade either on EXW or FCA terms. This is because in this case you have less responsibilities, and you need to arrange less steps beforehand. However, if you have very good relationship with your shipping company, or if you can organize the shipping at least to the port, to the Canadian port, then you may choose the other terms. Again, it's all a matter of convenience and negotiation. So in those two cases, as an exporter, you arrange the shipment as well. In this case, you arrange shipment and insurance. And in these cases, though, and it's very interesting, as the seller, you are only responsible for the product while it's loading. So when the product is loaded to the first mode of transit, like truck, for example, then you no longer are responsible for the product. What it means in specific example is that, let's say if your product has been loaded, say to the vessel, and then the vessel sinks, then you are no longer responsible for this product, and you are not responsible for providing the exchange of the product at no cost to your buyer, and you're not responsible to pay them back, to give them money back, because your product has been lost during this stage of the international trade transaction. And according to Incoterms, this is the responsibility of the buyer. Question?
I have a question. So, our container arrived to a customer in the US, and they claim that we were short on cases by 50. We know it left with the right amount of cases,
Mm-hmm.
got unloaded in the warehouse.
Mhm.
Who's responsible at that point? I mean, we were being nice and said we were helping with the 50 cases, but what do you do in that scenario?
It depends on the terms.
Or we don't have?
Yeah, that's actually the very big problem with trading trading with the states, because people do business as usual. Most of people trade with the states and business trade with the states just like they trade in Canada. They don't negotiate these terms. They don't put these terms in their contracts, and that's why all sorts of troubles happen. So in your case, what may be helpful, let's say, right now it's probably nothing you can do, but next time you specifically negotiate the terms. In your case, do you arrange the transportation?
Yeah.
You do, yeah. Okay. So in this case, this is probably your term, CIP. So you arrange the transportation, and you arrange the insurance, hopefully.
It was delivered. We
Oh, no.
Delivered.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So this is your term. It was although it was delivered, but there was it was 100, where it was 100 here and 50 here, right? So it's clearly, according to Incoterms, it's not your responsibility. If you loaded 100 pieces and only 50 arrived, if you had negotiated that you work and you ship on Incoterms CIP term, it wouldn't have been your responsibility. So this is the carriage we have here. So everything that is lost or stolen or broken or disappeared here is the responsibility of your buyer. You don't have to provide the replacements or money back.
Do you use seals on your load?
Yes.
So the seals when they got it?
Well, it came,
It's probably been stolen. Let's face it.
but it has to clear customs and everything has to match. So when they got, I don't know what point when it got delivered,
Mm-hmm.
something, they said there was 50 cases less.
Yeah.
There was 350 cases and they said they only got 300.
Could be lost. I mean, not necessarily stolen. So the point is, anything can happen, but when you trade with the states, please remember that this is the foreign market, and the trade with between foreign markets is regulated by Incoterms.
Are there contracts